We all know someone who loves to talk. Maybe that person is even you. There's a fine line, however, between being a chatterbox and alienating everyone around because of your incessant droning on and love affair with the sound of your own voice. Conversation is a two-way street. You have to listen as well as be heard. Sadly, not everyone has got this memo. Like Gary, for example, who came to stay with Reddit user Brit and spent the duration of his visit talking about himself, talking over others, and not listening. My husband Will has a friend named Gary who arrived on Sunday night to stay with us for the week, she begins. Gary and Will are friends from university, and while they used to be close, they've not seen each other in years. Brit continues, "This is the first time I've met Gary. 3 days into his visit and I'm struggling, guys." Gary talks non-stop. We're not just talking about Gary being excited at seeing his old friend, and being gossipy and chatty. Oh no. As Brit explains, he literally talked, mostly about himself, throughout the entire dinner last night. He kept talking after dinner. He kept talking until we went to bed. He has an opinion about everything. Will and I barely got any words in or got talked over. My husband could tell I was about to lose my cool by the time I excused myself for bed. Will apologized when he came to bed and says he remembered that Gary talked a lot but did not know he was going to do it incessantly and so rudely. So the couple hatched a plan and decided we would put more effort into speaking up, interjecting. Tonight, the three of us went out to try a new restaurant and it didn't go well, Brit continues. Gary kept trying to monopolize the conversation and would talk over me. I said, "Excuse me, please allow me to finish," and he laughed and apologized because he knows he talks too much and then kept talking. My husband then interjected and said, "Gary, I would like to hear what Brit has to say." So Gary apologized again and let me talk. When I finished, he nodded and then started continuing with whatever he was saying without acknowledging my point. Brit had had enough. In her own words, I was done being polite at this point. I was mad and highly irritated. I had already had a couple of drinks and thought, FK. This noise. The food arrived, and presented Brit with the perfect opportunity for revenge. Gary just sits there in front of his plate talking and talking. So I pushed my salad aside and grabbed his plate of untouched steak. He stopped talking, looked stunned, and said, "Brit, what are you doing?" I ignored him and kept eating his steak. He looks kind of PD and says, "Please stop eating my steak." I ignored him and ignored Will's death stare and kept eating Gary's steak. I ate the whole thing. They watched me and Gary didn't speak a word the whole time and I got to eat in glorious silence. Then I apologized to Gary and said some st like, "I know I eat too much and should have let him finish his steak." Gary tried to laugh it off. He didn't talk on the ride home. Now her husband is beyond PD at me and has asked me to apologize to Gary. I've agreed to apologize because what I did was not the right way to handle the situation. My question is how do I handle this for the rest of the week? Should I just stay away from him? Or is that being rude on top of my super rudeness? In this instance, no one thinks Brit's in the wrong, and it turns out a lot of people know a Gary. But perhaps the most insightful piece of advice came from another Redditor, who wrote, "When someone is completely ignorant of social norms and social cues, it makes us normal cue individuals uncomfortable. So our normal social cues to get them back on track doesn't even register on their radar. So, in order to get something to register on their radar, we must step out of our comfort zone to make the point since they do not hear our social cues.